Good evening for the fifth round of the MAIA Chess Open in Portugal, just north of Porto. Today we have an opponent who wishes not to be on the camera, so we're doing some tricky camera work. Acquiesced to his request. Yeah, as best we can. Some technical issues, unfortunately. My name is Hammer. I'm gonna be with you for this game, but fear not. Pia has made enough of a recovery that she will be back starting tomorrow morning. Keep that in mind. Tomorrow's game is a morning round starting 6 hours earlier. 11 a.m. Central European Time, 10 a.m. local in Portugal, and 5 a.m. U.S. Eastern. And we're off to the start of this game. Pawn to d4, and Anna pawn to d5, and then knight to f3, knight to f6 played. And then c4. Standard queen's gambit for this game. Hammer dodging the morning round. It's all calculated. What can I say? Anna plays the queen's gambit decline. This is actually the same opening we had yesterday. Although yesterday Anna had the white pieces, now she's playing that same opening with the black pieces. But here's hoping some of the things we discussed yesterday will be useful for the game today. Ricardo, today's opponent, 1900 rated. He goes for the trade between the pawns in the center. Not really considered a very ambitious way of playing, but it has been played in the last couple of years by none other than Magnus Carlsen, who kind of revived this previously considered harmless variation. After the trade, the benefit of this for black is that now it's much easier to get the light squared bishop into the game. Knight to c3, normal, and then the pawns are defending each other up the board. And here, in order to kind of justify the trade in the center to begin with, white goes queen to c2. Now, the queen is trying to control the f5 square, saying that, yeah, I kind of allowed your bishop to develop, but now I'm making sure it cannot do so at a optimal timing. And so you don't actually get the benefit you thought you were based on the early trade. Based on current ratings and playing black, pre-opening probability of Anna win is 56 to 57%. Using Francois Labelle's ELO win probability calculator. That is honestly one of the most interesting chat messages we've had this whole week. I'm not familiar with that tool, but 56 to 57% sounds about right to me. It's definitely no walkover winning with the black pieces against a player rated only 150 points behind you. Anna's tournament so far has been dominated by the fact that she's won against the lower rated players and she's lost, even though she was winning in both of those games, but she did end up losing against both her higher rated opponents. And the problem with that is that the way chess tournament systems work is that oftentimes when you lose, you get an easier opponent, aka someone lower rated. And then if you win, you get harder opponents, aka higher rated. Um, and you basically it's kind of a boring tournament if you're only doing what you're supposed to do, beating the lower rateds and losing against the higher rateds. The thing is, Anna wants to break out of that pattern, but this is not the game we want her to break out of that. We want her to keep winning against the lower rateds. And then it's a question on whether she'll be able to convert some of those good positions she's been having against the higher rateds. So yeah, this is not the moment, the game, to change up the yo-yo, because that yo-yo is going back up. If the opponent doesn't want to be on camera, is it possible to just see Anna and crop him out? Yeah, that's what we're working on. We thought we had it when we started the stream, Nork, but quite clearly it didn't work as intentioned. So we got people working on it to get the camera up and running. How many of 10 games would you win against Anna? Well, if you go to the Francois Labelle ELO win probability calculator, maybe you'll get your answer. I would be very disappointed if I won less than 95%. Okay, bishop to d6. This is interesting because we actually had a discussion about the Queen's Gambit declined yesterday because the game she had yesterday was kind of reminiscent of the game she played with the black pieces against Jennifer Yu at the Botes chess camp. The only difference between Anna's game yesterday and the one against Jen was that her opponent yesterday put the bishop on e7, while Anna, for the second game in a row, puts the bishop on d6. So she has a slightly more aggressive placement of the bishop, but the disadvantage of that is that you don't have your bishop neutralizing White's bishop pointing down on the queen. However, the plan that Jen utilized to win a nice game against Anna, she put her knight on the e2 square. And by not putting the knight here on f3 like Ricardo did, oh, that wasn't my intention. By not playing the knight here to f3, Jen was able to push her pawns forward in the center, which proved pretty effective. Anna tried to do that same thing yesterday, and it didn't work out for her because her opponent started making counter pressure in the middle. So right now, this is like reminiscent of both the game yesterday and the game she had against Jen, but it's distinctly different in that the knight is on f3, which means the plan of pushing the pawns forward isn't really available for White. Ooh, we have a new feature in chat. Last move number. I mean, it's a nice new feature, but at the same time, it's kind of just admitting that Anna's time pressure issues are not going away anytime soon. And so measures have been taken to make sure that people know where we are in getting to move 40 and getting those additional 30 minutes. We have been promised a fast Anna today. but the implementation of the move counter is not filling me with confidence. The camera is working just fine. Yes. It's just we're trying to get a system in order to respect the opponent's wishes, not to be on camera. Obviously, if it was up to me, I would say, screw it. You're on in a public chess tournament. You're gonna have to live with that. But you know, there are semi-legitimate reasons not wanting to be on camera. You might be a fugitive of the law, mafioso escaping the life. I don't know, something like that. Or a spy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A spy. That's unfortunate. Being a spy, going to a chess tournament and getting your cover blown by a streamer. Unfortunate. Bad hair day? Yeah, true. Yeah, but if I was concerned about that, I could not do my job at any point. But does the board color have to be green? Um, so here's the thing, CS. This is not my normal board. I have a nice board when I play chess on the line. But after the first day of me having a nice board, I was told in no uncertain terms that it was the wish of my employer that the board be green. And I don't know what Anna has about green, if it's like a thing. She's actually wearing green today. Hopefully, we'll be able to show you at some point. But yeah, that is the explicit wishes of the streamer. Chess.com color? Ah, it could be a sponsorship thing. Yeah, maybe. Okay, there she is. I don't know if you'll agree with me that that's green, but that's definitely green. I don't care what you say. It's one of the better greens. Much better green than the one we have on the board, that's for sure. Why is it blurred? We're respecting the opponent's wishes not to be on camera. It's the Swedish let's hide from the Russians and the forest green. As far as I recall, the Swedes stayed away from World War II, not wanting to get involved against the Germans nor against the Russians. I don't know. Has Sweden even been at war with the Russians at any point? I don't think so. Many times? Okay. Finland takes the brunt. Yeah, no, that's Finland. I am very aware. But the thing is, Finland kind of protects Sweden from Russia. Because interestingly, Sweden doesn't have a single border to Russia. Because Finland kind of goes up there and makes sure that so like the northern Swedish border is not to Norway but to Finland. Oh, Finland belonged to Sweden. Oh, Yeah, so when you guys say that Sweden warred with Russia, what you're really saying is that Finland warred with Russia, and just like Norway, you guys were very into owning other places. Isn't Norway one of the few countries that never got invaded by Britain? How did you manage that? I'll tell you how we managed. The German beat the Britons to it. There, okay, this is kind of like back of the mind knowledge, but I'm pretty sure I heard that the British had invasion plans for Norway because they wanted to secure a very important, coastal area, and then the Germans beat them to it. Hammer, do you know any Sami people? Of course I do. We got some moves. Um, Rook to e8. The rook is pointing down through the center of the board. In general, you want to place your rooks where you have none of your own pawns, because your own pawns tend to limit the scope of the rook. So here, putting this rook on what we call a semi-open file. It would be an open file if there were no pawns whatsoever. And this is a semi-open file because there's no black pawns, but there is an opposing white pawn. Ricardo goes bishop e2, which is very surprising to me because normally you'd rather have the bishop pointing in towards the center of the board. But frankly, considering the plan Anna has used in the past in this opening, um, this is this could actually be clever because the plan Anna used against Jen, the previous time she played like this, she went pawn to a5 and knight to a6, and then the threat is that the knight comes forward and attacks both the queen and the bishop. And here Anna does go with that a5 move again, and after castling, I assume now she's going to go knight to a6. But here, the normal move would be to go pawn a3, just covering that square, making sure that the knight cannot jump forward. But maybe that's unnecessary here. Because the main reason you're preventing this knight moving forward is because it would attack both the bishop and the queen. Here, though, it would not. That being said, white is kind of struggling for a plan here. Because one of the most common ways of playing this kind of position is trying to move your knight forward in the center and then having the pawn coming behind and giving that support. But with Anna having her bishop on a somewhat uncommon placement, there's not a lot of hope you're going to be able to use that e5 square for your knight, which in turn means that you're struggling getting this f pawn influencing towards the center of the board. The secondary plan for white in these kind of pawn formations is what's known as a minority attack. It's called a minority attack because you go and push forward with two pawns against black's three. But the essence is that if we do something like this, even though you're kind of moving forward with less pawns than the opponent, what you're trying to do is create a position where the opponent has a pawn that can be easily attacked on the open files you generate by advancing your pieces. But the thing is, with Anna having the bishop here with the pawn and potentially the knight, it's kind of difficult to envision a future where that minority attack is going to be a viable plan. I don't know why Anna's thinking here, though. When she played pawn a5, her intention is clearly to go knight a6. So she might as well do it. Although, moving the knight to a6, the plan is usually to get this knight over towards the king side. But the thing is, this knight is, number one, covering this g5 square. So often the plan is to move the knight all over here, but yeah, you're not going to be able to do that in this situation. Also, if we just make some random moves, if you move the knight to the e6 square, as was your plan, then the knight is blocking the rook, which means white is able to push their knight forward, which I was pointing out it's bad for white that this option is not available. But if you do your normal maneuvering, you allow for the situation where the knight moves forward and then gets the coverage it needs from the pawn. And this knight is incredibly difficult to kick out, and it becomes the tip of the spear, and then you can have the pawns pushing forward, something like the king moving out of the way, the rook coming in, and just do some attack like this, which is super, super scary. And it's difficult for black to prevent because you can't move the knight, you can't really move the queen because you need to protect the knight. So these two pieces are kind of stuck. And as long as you cannot move the knight, it means you cannot push your pawn forward to kick the knight out of its very nice placement. So yeah, it's fascinating this position how it looks like white doesn't have a clear plan moving forward with both knight to e5 and the minority attack being conveniently prevented. But at the same time, it's very difficult for black to execute a sensible plan of their own without allowing white to get better circumstances for their plan A in the meantime. Come on, fast Anna. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so far she only spent 12 minutes for 10 moves. It's not too bad. But this is the kind of position where, having played pawn to a5, it's strange that she pauses to go knight a6. Because that's kind of the obvious follow-up in what she's doing. Camera gone. We'll get it back, I think. Yeah, we're getting it back. I don't know what the issue is. There's some tinkering being done. She promised. Well, if you believed a streamer's promise, that's on you. To this day, I believe the Boteses promised a soccer, on-stream soccer game. I was really looking forward to that, and I have been for the last 5 years. What other moves could she be thinking about making? Um, maybe pawn to b5. It looks really ugly, because then you have this guy being the most backward pawn. In general, you want the pawn that's defending the others to be pretty safe. In this circumstance, the root of the pawn chain is well hidden on the b7 square. Very difficult for white to attack this. But the problem of going pawn to b5 is that white has a much easier time now attacking the new root of the pawn chain. The advantage, on the other hand, is that you're being aggressive with your pawns. So then you have to weigh those pros and cons against each other. She goes knight a6, which, I mean, it's reasonable. I mean, in my opinion, obvious. But somewhat concerning, I think, that she spends 10 minutes on a move that she was clearly planning to make the move before. And computer really hates this plan, which is interesting, because this plan is considered to be the good one when white puts their knight on the e2 square. But now, I guess we've kind of discovered why. That if you do the standard maneuvering of your knight over to the center and to the king side of the board, the problem is anytime. So he played a3 and he played it very quickly, which is concerning because that kind of tells us that this guy is a quick player, not really Anna's favorite to play against. And now, if she just continues her normal plan, I am seriously concerned about this knight to e5 move. Because this knight becomes an absolute beast. And he wants to play knight to e5 here as well, but he can't really do that, right? Because both the rook and the bishop has control of the e5 square. But once you move your knight in front of your rook, all that changes and it becomes highly problematic. He's simply prepared still because Anna always plays this against the Queen's Gambit, and he knew. Well, Anna always plays the Queen's Gambit declined, but she told us yesterday that this idea with bishop to d6 and knight to a6 is something she doesn't normally do, and that it was something she had only prepared for the first time against Jennifer in LA. And therefore, she wasn't necessarily that familiar with the plans, which was part of the reason she spent so much time in the opening yesterday. Pawn to b6. Pawn to b6 makes a lot of sense. Just trying to get the bishop here and then push pawn to c5 later on. Computer absolutely hates it. Computer is kind of concerned about this pressure in the long term. I'm not super fond of it either. I'm starting to wonder whether this whole a5 and knight to a6 plan just doesn't work out when your opponent has their knight on f3 in comparison to having the knight on e2. Because the thing about the knight on f3, it is better placed. It's controlling two central squares as opposed to only one. It's placed higher up on the board, so it makes sense. The disadvantage is that you struggle getting the f pawn forward. It's kind of like the Jababa London, frankly, where you're not too fond of having the knight in front of the pawn because you want the pawn to influence in towards the center of the board. But here you might get the best of both worlds because you're just planning to move this knight away and then getting the pawn forward. In fact, a typical plan in this kind of position would be to Yeah, I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it, but it would be to like go knight back, pawn to f4, and then move the knight up again. Genuinely a pretty standard plan for these kind of positions. Doesn't really work here though, because here whenever you go pawn to f4, it's just a free pawn in the center of the board, which is another reason why putting the bishop here on the e2 square was very weird. It doesn't influence the center, and the bishop is blocking the rook's ability to protect. But yeah, I think part of the reason why Anna is using so much time right now is she's making the realization that her standard plan of moving the knight to e6, it might actually not work out very well because it allows the opponent to push their knight to e5. Is this prep? No, this is not prep. If it was prep, he wouldn't have played the bishop to the e2 square. He would have placed the bishop more aggressively. In general, people think, yeah, people overestimate the lengths that you can prepare ahead of time, ahead of the game, even at the very, very top level. Maybe I'm not a great example because I haven't been working a lot enough on my chess lately. But in my recent tournament, I was out of prep on move like 5 several times. But I've spent a lot of time looking at chess, right? So even though I'm not in what I prepared for that game specifically, I can still lean on some prior knowledge. I just have to dig a little bit deeper in my mind. Who is teaching these streamers Jabava London? Well, I know Benzea is. Alex Benzea of Romania. He is Andrea's coach, and he's been trying to get Alexandra to play the Jabava London as well. But she's resisting for the time being. Anna, on the other hand, she's sensible. She likes to put her pawns in the center of the board. I appreciate that. Does Anna prep on her own for this tournament? I don't think so, because I think she was referring to that Pia had been helping her out previously. Is chess your full-time job? Yes. Yes, it is. But I'm not good enough to play chess. So I do lots of different things, including playing, but on the rare occasion. Engine says point 0.7. Isn't that a little too much for this Carlsbad position? Yeah, so the pawn formation here, with black having 4 on the queen side, white has 2. But then in return, white has 5 on the king side, is smash center, whereas black has 3. This is such a famous formation of the pawns that it has its own name, the Karlsbad structure, which is named after a spa town, Karlsbad, and I believe it's in the Czech Republic, but it has a very clearly German name. Bad actually means bath. So, spa town. One of the famous spa towns in Germany these days, which actually hosted the best ever chess team we've seen from the German Schach Bundesliga, the German chess league. That team was actually called Baden Baden. And yeah, as you can imagine, it was also a spa place. Oh, Karlsbad is known as Karlovy Vary now. Okay, that makes sense. The Czechs didn't want to keep the German name. Baden-Baden is a casino place. Pretty sure it's mostly famous for its spas. It would be a weird thing to have the name Bath if you were in a bath kind of city. A well-preserved Roman steam bath was discovered in 1847. Dostoevsky wrote The Player while he was addicted to playing at the Baden-Baden casino. Wait, how old is Dostoevsky? He died in 1881. Okay. He has no obvious moves now. Well, I think Rook B1 is pretty obvious. Because Anna just left her protection of the B4 square, so it makes sense for him to try and execute one of his two main plans. Plan A is knight to e5, and plan B is pawn to b4. Knight to e5 is not possible, because Anna has control of that square with her pieces. So then he has to go to plan B and try and advance this guy. The problem is, if she then continues her plan, then Ricardo can switch from his plan B over to plan A because the knight has been blocked the rook's ability to control the e5 square. And with the knight coming in here, the pawn will come forward supporting the knight, and that knight is going to be a complete nuisance to deal with. Genuinely highly problematic for Anna here. Her best move would be bishop to e7, trying to neutralize this pressure. Because by moving the bishop back, the key here is that you can then move your knight without letting your queen be attacked, and then you can try and trade off this very powerful white knight in the center. But like then that's already kind of highly problematic. You have to find some good moves just to survive essentially. And that's why having to deal with this knight coming to e5 is something we would prefer not to have to deal with. But the problem is she doesn't really have any other plan than continuing the knight's journey. I'm not a super fan of putting the bishop on this d6 square, allowing this bishop to have such convenient pressure down towards the queen. But I do think what tripped her up is that she doesn't necessarily know how to deal with this with the knight on f3 as opposed to with the knight on e2. So this plan she's executing is very good against the knight being on the e2 square, which we saw yesterday because that's the plan her opponent used, and he got an advantage after just 15 moves. With the knight on f3, however, the fact that you can't really execute your main plan, because it allows the knight to continue further forward is a concern. Has Anna won or lost rating so far? I would guess she's approximately in 0 in rating because she beat 2 lower rated players and she lost against 2 higher rated. So that feels like it should be about 0. I can look it up though, but I'm probably not going to beat the people in chat looking it up. So slow. My mind is a bit slow. Anna Kemling, she is minus 0.6. So that is actually rounded down to -1. But interestingly, both minus 0.5 and plus 0.5 are both rounded up, which creates an inherent inflation in the rating system, which I find very interesting because everyone's talking about rating deflation and how the ratings are so much lower now than they were in the past because of, I guess, an influx of new players who were better than their skill level or something. But the fact that 0.05 is always rounded positively, as in up when you're on plus and down when you're on minus, kind of. That means there is some inherent inflation. Always. Isn't the decimal just hidden on the FIDE website? No, it's rounded every month. And then you could argue that they should start hiding it instead, but they're not doing that. It's weird to introduce decimals then. Well, I mean, if you play a tournament, it's usually 9 games, right? So the decimals do count quite a bit during those 9 games. It's not like they're rounded for every individual game played. And if you play more than one tournament in a month, then, the rounding makes less and less of a significance. New players being introduced has a much larger effect than the rounding. Yeah, this I agree with. But I don't understand why introducing new players makes such a difference. I don't understand why lowering the average rating or lowering the median would affect the highest rated players. Because in theory, right, it would just give more fish for the sharks to feed on. If you follow my analogy. Is she losing? I mean, computer doesn't like her position, but number one, her opponent hasn't really done anything extraordinary. And she hasn't really done anything that should suggest she's much worse. So I'm thinking it's fine for the time being. Computer's overreacting. How is Anna worse? Well, one of the main reasons, I guess, is that she cannot execute her main plan because that would allow White to get a really good plan in return. So the only thing to be attentive of here is that if Anna continues her normal way of playing, then she's in big, big trouble. She needs to find a different way, a new plan, and reset her frame of mind. And it's not super easy to do that. Because if she now tries to go pawn to b6, the knight to a4 attacks both this pawn and the one on c6. So pawn to b6 would just genuinely just lose a pawn at this point. So to me, the thing that makes the most sense is bishop to g4. Because basically you want to get the knight here, but you don't want to allow knight to e5. And the unfortunate consequence of that is that you have to seriously consider giving up your bishop in order to eliminate the knight. And frankly, if she plays this move, I think her opponent is likely to just go for the bishop trade. After which computer thinks her position is completely fine. So I mean, I think the computer is massively misjudging the eval bar, because it's actually it. Oh, never mind. It didn't really like rook to d1. It just didn't come in with the engine eval of that. So rook d1 is not as bad as this indicates. Yeah, so yeah, this is more accurate. 0.3 right now. Computer wanted rook to e1 and thought that was much better because it created a circumstance where you're protecting this guy to try and get this pawn moving forward in the long run. But I think she's fine as long as she avoids knight to e6. That's the only thing to be scared of here. Allowing white to get their knight on the really good central square, that is highly problematic. But as long as you don't do that, you're fine. Now I'm thinking bishop to g4 is the move. You can probably also play bishop back to e7 because I'm kind of concerned about this pressure. But there's no chance she's going to move this bishop a second time. It doesn't make logical sense. I heard a rumor we'll be getting Pia tomorrow. Yes, Pia has recovered enough to take over for the final 4 rounds of this tournament. But mark your calendars right now. Tomorrow's round is a morning round. Out of nowhere, in the middle of the tournament, they changed the starting time of the game, and not just a little bit, a 6-hour difference in the start of the game. I believe they're doing some kind of blitz tournament, and that's why. But keep in mind that tomorrow's game will start at 11 a.m. Central European time. That's 10 a.m. local time in Portugal and 5 a.m. US Eastern. And you'll be back for the Olympiad? Yes. So I'll be back later on. You're just gonna miss me for 2 weeks as the chess Olympiad starts in 15 days. September 11th is the first round with both Pia and Anna representing Sweden. Would people in North America really get up that early? I mean, I wouldn't. But believe it or not, there are actually people who are regularly awake at 5 a.m. every day. Mind blowing, I know, but we're all different. Why would people stay up until 5 a.m.? They should be asleep. Oh, Druid. Oh, I can tell you're not one of the special people. They're not staying up until that hour, my dude. Oh, I understand why you're struggling to imagine that scenario even being a thing. They're not staying up until 5 a.m. That's all I'm going to say. I've stayed up until 5 a.m. many more times than I've woken up. I mean, I think that is common for my kind of people, Firebird. I mean, I've gotten up before 5 a.m. very, very rarely. Like a couple of flights, maybe 10 times in my life, right? Staying up beyond 5 a.m., I've probably done 100 times minimum. What's the longest you've stayed up? Yeah, we're not having a competition in unhealthy habits. And I can genuinely say I don't keep record of the longest I've stayed up. It's it's less than 30 hours, I'm pretty sure. Rookie numbers? Yeah, but it's not the kind of numbers where you don't want to be a rookie. Having rookie numbers when it comes to, sleep deprivation, some might consider that a good thing. Does Hammer drink energy drinks? No, never, ever in my life. Um, I drink tea though. I'm assuming you don't count that. Never had coffee, never had any of the brands that shall not be named without giving the stream lots of money. Never in your life? You've never tried it? I've never tried it. I've also never had a beer and never had coffee. I can only say that I am a very boring, set in my habits kind of person. I don't really do new things. What do you drink? Tea and water. And when I do TV broadcasts, they tend to supply soda. And like I never buy soda in the store, but when it's kind of like just sitting there, I struggle to resist. Have you ever been hammered? No, I've never been drunk in my life. In general, I drink very little. Is this in Portugal? Yes, Sarkaz. We're in MAIA, which, based on Google Maps research I did, seems to be a suburb in the north, just north of Porto. Camera slightly to the left. Um, yeah, maybe I'll ask. What are her best options for the next move? Yeah, I was saying that I think bishop to g4 was a good option. And then I also said there are probably other decent options as well. But turns out computer does not believe there are other decent options. It is a very firm believer in this bishop to g4 move. Essentially, Anna cannot go knight to e6 because it would allow her opponent to jump forward in the center. And then the problem with letting the knight jump forward is that the pawn will come after and reinforce the knight and create a potential pawn storm on the king side. Um, so she cannot do the plan she would normally do. And the issue here is that she doesn't really have that many other plans to choose between. The second option would be getting the bishop into play, but the bishop really only has two available squares. It cannot go to the f5 square because that one's under control from the white queen. It cannot go to the e6 square for the same reason the knight cannot go there, because it would block the rook's influence towards that e5 square, allowing the white knight to push forward and then follow up with the pawn thereafter. So that means the bishop has to go either to g4 or to d7. And both are probably fine, to be fair. But it feels better moving your bishop higher up. The main reasoning being that if your opponent tries to kick that bishop, you can just move the bishop back and then you can actually get the bishop to attack towards the queen. Anna goes b5. This is a very typical move for this opening, but like we talked about it earlier how it's fairly normal in this opening, but it's quite significantly weakening for the pawn on c6. Because previously you had these pawns defending each other, and the root of the pawn chain, the pawn on b7, that one was very difficult for white to attack. But once you move the root up, a different pawn is given that responsibility, being the furthest back to defend the others. But this one is on a half open file where white can potentially put pressure down the C file. It's much easier for white to attack this one than it was attacking the one on b7. On the flip side, making this advance with the pawns is generally positive, taking some space. So it's a question of whether grabbing the space is better for black than creating the weakness on c6 is bad. Happy with time management? I think it's fine that she spent a lot of time on this move because here she had to diverge from her main plan and she made the correct assessment that she had to prevent the knight from coming into the e5 square. So spending 15 minutes on this move I think was fine. But Spending 10 minutes on knight to a6, I thought was kind of outrageous. Because when she played pawn to a5, it was very clear this was her plan. And spending 10 minutes on this and then 5 minutes on knight c7, she made the moves that she knew she was going to make after 10 seconds. She was, just control checking and whatnot. But those are the kind of decisions that we need to go faster. If you know within 10 seconds, I think I'm going to make this move, and then spend 10 minutes pondering it, that's usually a bad sign. But time management is a very tricky because sometimes, these kind of, if you were planning a move, then it turns out to be a mistake, then that's an issue. But Anna yesterday did promise us that she would be less nervous about just losing the game through a silly blunder and you spending less time double checking. And my assessment is that spending 10 minutes for knight a6 is not following her own promise from yesterday. Because this is the kind of move that she knew she was going to make immediately. And the only reason she spent a lot of time on it was double checking more than, I think, actually considering alternatives. Okay. Chatters have influenced the stream. You've gotten an additional 10 centimeters of Anna's back, which means that the next time she leans back, she'll still be in frame. Who said it doesn't pay off to be a chatter? You can actually influence the content. Moaning pays off. It generally does. But on the negative side, it also means that nobody likes you. But you do get your way because people would rather just do whatever you're complaining about than having to deal with you in the long term. Jokes on them. No one liked me already. And yeah, that is knowing your superpowers and how to use it in everyday life. The English expression is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Wow. Pretty good. I hadn't heard that before, actually. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. We're happy to see Anna's opponent thinking. He spent 11 minutes on his previous move, and frankly, it's not clear how he's going to proceed. The problem for White here is that he made all the logical moves. He developed his knights, he developed his bishops, he got connection between the rooks, he castled, got the queen off the first rank, and he centralized his rook. But what now? This is one of the trickiest parts of a chess game. When you've done all the logical stuff and you start going into the situation where you have to move a piece for the second time. So in the opening phase of the game, you basically want to get your pieces on as good squares as possible in as few moves as possible. But the middle game is kind of indicated by when you start planning more long term. And it means that you're often making several moves with the same piece in order to maximize their value on the board. So for instance, I think the computer's top choice here is bishop to d3. It it's a difficult move to make in the opening because then you're saying like, okay, I'm moving my bishop a second time. That's not great. But because we are in the middle game, moving things a second time is kind of what it's all about. And here, the idea would be that you're trying to facilitate the control of the e4 square and push the pawn forward there. And that could be concerning because after this pawn to e4 move, there's a lot of pressure against the knight. The knight cannot move because of the bishop's pressure on the queen. And if the bishop moves back, there are some concerns that the knight will make its way to the e5 square, which we talked about in I wouldn't say similar situation, but in general, this is one of White's goals to get this knight forward and into an attacking position. And by forcing the bishop on the defensive, that enables the knight to move up with some proper preparation. Here, because the black bishop is pointing towards white's, what the computer is saying is that the bishop needs to get out of a potential trade, and then you move the knight forward. After which, black is in big trouble because you have this pressure against the pawn on c6, but you also have this incredible knight in the center that's almost impossible to chase away. So this would be quite dangerous for black. I'm hoping though that he doesn't realize he needs to start moving the same piece a second time. So he does have this move, rook to e1, which makes sense in terms of centralizing your rooks and not having to move another piece a second time. You could argue it's the second time because he castled, but castling is primarily a king move. And then this would be the first rook move. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be back with the follow-up from Ricardo. Question mark move on the board, but it's still a better position for white according to the computer engine. I think the computer is being very harsh on this move. In fact, I find it very, very interesting. Yeah, no, this is a very interesting move. Trying to exploit the fact that the knight's influence of the e4 square is a bit of a the knight isn't really influencing the e4 square because of the pressure the bishop has down towards the queen. Anna can win a pawn now if she goes pawn to g5, attacking the bishop, forcing the bishop back, and then she can capture the pawn in the center. So she can win a pawn. But the thing is, playing pawn to g5, exposing her own king, having that pawn leave its defensive tasks is somewhat concerning. And actually, after knight to e5, the attack against the pawn on c6 and the fact that you're shielding the rook from having the protection on the pawn in the center means that white is actually likely to win one of these two pawns coming up. So maybe you're not even winning a pawn with that to begin with. The computer's recommended move is pawn to b4 and then pawn to e5, ignoring the attack on the knight, rather creating a counterattack on black's pieces. Pawn takes knight. Bishop takes knight. Black has to recapture, but that opens up in front of the king. White is not down on material, but maybe they are. So here, you cannot capture the pawn with the queen because that leaves the bishop on e2 undefended. So you have to take it with your pawn, but that leaves the pawn on a3 undefended. And we can get a position like this where Anna is up a pawn, but she's completely shattered the defenses in front of her own king. The computer believes this is favorable for black, but it looks super unclear to me. Oh, she's gonna burn the clock here. There's so many things to consider. Pawn up, just the simple capture. This position just took fire. And it makes logical sense what white is doing because he had improved. We just talked about it. He had improved the positioning of all his pieces, and he didn't really want to make plans, as in moving the same piece more than once. He just wanted to, create the chaos instantly. And one of the brilliant things about this move is that if Anna just immediately captures it, why did he put the rook on the d1 square? Well, it might be that he has seen this move knight to e5. And the thing is, he couldn't go knight to e5 here, right? Because then black had this square under control. Captures, and black has an extra pawn. However, playing this pawn to e4 first, now if Anna captures, knight to e5 is super powerful because the knight can no longer be captured. since you put the rook here. Because the capture is now met by the recapture, obviously. But the key here is that it opens an attack from the rook on the queen because the black pawn is no longer on this d5 square. And in addition to the queen being attacked, the knight is under attack as well. And white wins the game. If he has seen knight to e5, this is absolutely brilliant. But the good news is his intention might be to play knight takes on e4. In fact, I find this likely to be his intention. And then Anna is fine according to engine. Oh gosh, but the way she's fine is tricky. Oh no, she's better. Computer, the more it thinks, the more it's happy. Yeah, so here, rook takes is good. And the key idea is that, so this rook is defended by the knight, but the knight cannot capture because of the pressure towards the queen. However, if the queen captures the rook, we don't need to recapture as that loses our own queen. We can go pawn to g5, chase the bishop while at the same time maintaining the pressure against the queen. Yeah, no, this is good for black. And then he might try bishop takes on f6 with the idea that he's eliminating the defender of the rook and then he'll take the rook afterwards. Originally, I thought that, well, this is fine for black because you can just go queen here and keep the rook defended. But in fact, there's an even better move. You can say that if I'm going to lose my rook anyway, I might as well get as many pieces as I can in exchange for it. And you give up your rook for the bishop while attacking the queen, which is important. And then after the queen saves itself, then we take the bishop, and suddenly black has two bishops in trade for a rook, which is a very serious advantage. In fact, the computer believes this is game over. I don't know. I think Anna's going to take the pawn. And taking the pawn is technically a mistake. No, I can't call that a mistake. Taking the pawn makes tons of sense. But the thing is, after she takes the pawn, it's a super exciting moment in the game. Because if he finds knight to e5, then he's going to have great pressure on black's position. But on the other hand, if he plays knight takes e4, which initially makes the most sense in terms of just increasing the pressure on this diagonal, then Anna might get an advantage. In fact, maybe just win the game outright. But she has a lot of options to choose between, so I'm expecting her to spend quite a bit of time. G5, I think, is unlikely. I think it's between this b4 move and taking the pawn. And the problem with the b4 move is that it allows so many different things. And getting this pawn in here, and especially that variation we saw where you have to recapture with a pawn instead of the queen because this one's protected. Having to open up in front of your own king, it doesn't feel good. It might be good, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't necessarily feel right. So I think she's going to take. And then the big question is whether his plan is to play the amazing knight to e5. Bishop e7 instead of recapture. Well, the thing is, if the pawn moves up to attack the knight and white makes a counter threat, if you start retreating your bishop, it gives white time to save their knight. Then white is able to capture the knight and attack your bishop. And after all of these trades, your problem is that you've miscounted everything. And here white has one knight more than their opponent. So you can't do that. You have to accept the weakening in front of your king, and that it's not great. She can find g5. She doesn't really want to find g5 though. I don't think g5 is a good move. It's just very weakening of the king's the defensive situation. It's the second choice of the computer, but I think in practical play, it's the worst choice. Okay. She's played 13 moves so far, and we're approaching the 45-minute mark, which means she has now spent approximately half of her thinking time for the first 40 moves. And as you may know, 13 is not half of 40. Not to mention the fact that she played every single move very quickly for the first 10 moves. That being said, this moment is the right moment to spend time. So, time management is not just about how much time you spend, it's about spending your time in the right moments. Even though it feels bad going below 45 minutes, half of the 90 you started with, it's the right decision to make under the current circumstances. Because this move is very important to get right. What about rook b8 to prepare b4? And b4 is available. b4 doesn't need any preparation. Our opponent just created chaos with this pawn making its way forward in the center of the board. This is not a position for preparatory moves anymore. Preparatory moves we do before the chaos ensues. The chaos has ensued. So now it's all about just I'll capture that one, you'll capture there, and try and survive the complications. Then why is E4 question mark? Because the computer believed white was much better, and now white is only better. The computer's evaluation isn't really affected by the practical difficulty of a move. The fact that the computer believes Anna's opponent was rash in making this advance in the center and that he should have prepared it with the bishop moving forward first, it doesn't change the fact that making the advance in the center is super scary. Objectively a bad move, but one that puts a lot of pressure on the opponent. After pawn takes e4, knight takes e4, how is bishop f5? Bishop f5 is good. Bishop f5 is good, but rook takes is almost winning. The problem is not him recapturing, which is why this moment is actually not the most exciting one, in my opinion. I think she's going to take on e4. I think it makes the most sense. But then, if he recaptures, Anna's position is fine. I would say better. I would maybe even say significantly better. But if he instead plays knight to e5, exploiting the fact that the bishop cannot capture this knight in this moment because the removal of the pawn off the d5 square has created the ability for the rook to attack the queen while the pawn attacks the knight. This is the concern. And him going knight to e5, I feel like is a 50-50 decision, which is going to be exciting. Okay, 41 minutes. It looks like she might be about to make a decision here. Honestly, that's a reasonably quick decision considering the. Oh my gosh, she played g5. Okay, computer believes this is fine, but I think from a practical standpoint, that is a big mistake. Yeah, I am very concerned about the king's safety right now. What move are we on? Anna just made her 14th move. Computer's not concerned? Well, computer has some mad defensive skills. I thought this was pretty cooked after e5. Actually, e5 would be fine. Because then you're getting rid of white's central control. You take the bishop, they take your bishop, but you just recapture. And even though the defense of your king is poor, at least you have really good control with the center of the board. Okay, to be fair, this also looks kind of good for white. Yeah, but I think bishop back is better, but it's a very good sign that her opponent has options to choose between, because that's gonna burn his clock a little bit. Can white sack a piece here on g5? That's certainly one of the things he's gonna consider. Takes, takes, takes. Keeping that pressure with the bishop on the queen. And then I guess bishop back makes sense. After pawn to e5, computer says white is better. Which I think is kind of weird, because white only has 2 pawns in trade for a knight. But the thing is that the white pawns are just rushing down the board. And black's pieces don't really have any good squares. I'm very surprised the computer is so positive on white's behalf here. So knight takes here is an option, pawn up is an option, bishop back is an option. Computer does say knight takes is very bad though. But the key here is that after this trade, you have to take the pawn to make sure that you don't get hit by the pawn avalanche. Okay, he plays pawn to e5. I think this is less dangerous for Anna than retreating the bishop. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic as a result of this move. And Anna moves quickly in return. Well, she didn't really have a choice. She needed to take the bishop because she was going to lose her bishop or the knight herself. Okay, that happened pretty quickly. So the pawn comes in with a fork. Since you're losing a piece, you have to take the opponent's. The pawn continues and attacks the knight, so you take out the pawn. And now this one is unprotected, so I assume you take that one. This is a better position. I mean, computer says this is fine for black, but I do not like I don't like how open it is in front of black's king. What I do like is that black, has very good control of the central squares. Also, what I don't like is that there's no good way of getting this bishop into the game. Yeah, no, I still think this is problematic. That open line could also be an attack for Anna. You make a reasonable point, but the thing is that if white goes, like, imagine a future where she gets the rook over to attack, white can put a pawn just one step forward, and then there's a pawn protected by two other pawns. And that creates a really solid barrier to make sure that this rook isn't really able to make any threats. Sometimes you can deal with this by pushing your pawn to trade off and weaken the pawn defense. But here you don't have the ability to push forward because the white knight is in the way. Wow, oh my gosh, he doesn't take the pawn. He goes knight to e5. That is a shocker as far as I'm concerned. Okay, but this changes everything. Remember how I said I was so happy with black's control in the center of the board? This knight making its way to e5 means that the rook no longer has influence on the e4 square. So the bad news about this is that black's control in the center is not as good as we were kind of hoping it was going to be earlier on. The good news is that with the pawn still on h4, remember what we talked about just a couple of seconds ago, the ability to attack on the g file, for instance. Now pawn to g3 is not nearly going to be as effective because black has not only one but two potential pawns that can try and trade off there. On the other hand, we cannot move the king out of the way to get the rook over because then the knight would come in with a fork on the king and queen. So Anna is up a pawn, but it is an isolated double pawn on the side of the board. And white accomplishes what they have been trying to do for quite some time, which is getting the knight to the e5 square, which is an amazing placement for that knight. You know what? I think this move is actually quite a bit better, at least from a practical standpoint, than what the computer will have us believe. This knight is super annoying to deal with because it's the same problem we faced earlier, just in a different version. If we want to try and trade off this knight, or rather chase it away, our only real chance of chasing the knight would be to move our pawn up. There are two problems with that. Number one, we would first need to move our knight, but let's pretend we can move the knight without too many issues. Number two, if we then follow up with pawn to f6, that's going to further weaken the situation around our king. And here the knight can move forward, but if I hadn't moved the queen, if I had centralized the rook instead, the queen would be able to come in and give checkmate. Either this one, supported by the knight, or this one, with the knight dealing the finishing blow itself. So, in summation, we can't really chase the knight away. And that is definitely a concern. Do competitions use a variety of chessboards? I thought the official ones are green and white. There's definitely no regulations on what kind of a board you use, but the green and white boards are exclusively plastic. I don't think there's anyone making wooden boards out of green and white. And maybe that's just my preference, both online and in real life. But I don't think it's a controversial opinion if I say wooden boards a lot nicer than plastic boards. Sponsored by Big Wood. Well, I am Norwegian. Gotta promote our natural resources. Sweden also has a lot of forests, so this would be one of the few times the Norwegian and Swedish business interests are aligned. Okay. Knight to e6 is my favorite move, and I have a good reasoning for it. Number one, if white is not careful now, and if they think they can start attacking us, then we can go knight takes d4, eliminating the pawn protecting the knight, and thereby ridding ourselves of the most annoying white piece on the board. So knight to e6 threatens to undermine the knight. So we couldn't chase it away, but we can try and remove the defender. This forces white to go pawn to f4, having more protection. And now here I like the move knight to g7. The knight continues its journey, creating more defensive stuff around the king. And we're trying to get our bishop into the game by taking control of the f5 square. And if we can go bishop f5 afterwards, we will have developed our piece. We would be up a pawn. We would have decent central control. And we would chase the queen away from pointing down towards our king. Computer didn't like this though, because bishop to d3 just prevents every single plan I just mentioned and prepares for the queen to get over here and take this pawn. Yeah. Okay, we probably need to go pawn to b4, if I'm honest. If these pawns are traded, that would be huge for us, because that would open up for the rook. So white probably doesn't want to make the trade, but if they don't make the trade, we can take this pawn. And people are always really insecure about sacrificing pawns. And this queen could even go in here and then we'll attack over here. Yeah, no, this is the way. The question is, do we go there first? No, you know what? I really like provoking this f4 move, partly because we're moving our knight closer towards our own king. But if white is forced to play f4 to reinforce the knight, it also means that white will have a harder time attacking some of our stuff over here. To give an example, if Anna now goes something like just trying to get the bishop out and defending the pawn that has some pressure against it, here, queen to d2 is a decent move. Attacking towards the h6 move, h6 pawn, you may think that the king can just move up and protect, but here comes the point I wanted to illustrate. Queen takes pawn, sacrificing the queen, but then following up with the knight attacking both the king and the queen thereafter. So that's why I kind of like forcing white to play f3 because it limits their options of creating attacks towards our king. What move are we at? Anna played 2 quick moves in a row. She's currently thinking on her 17th. Knight e6 looks more promising than b4. I think we're going to have to play b4 at some point. So b4 is also fine. And the good thing about the b4 move is that because it attacks both the knight and the pawn, and players generally being unhappy to sacrifice stuff, whenever she does play b4, there's a fair chance her opponent is just gonna capture. And that would be great because that would open up the scope for the rook, which could be very important. So knight to e6 and then b4, or b4 immediately. Both are good, but she needs to go pawn to b4. The game is pretty much over due to the time difference. I can tell you're new to the channel. I assure you the game is not over. A lot can happen still. She's gonna be down to 8 minutes before we're just a little bit worried. Okay, knight to e6 has been played. The threat of capturing on d4 would eliminate the defender of the knight. This knight is white's most important piece by a mile. So white has to go pawn to f4 to reinforce. Are you allowed to wear a cow costume during a tournament? I think if she was going to wear a cow costume, doing it at the chess camp would have been a more appropriate arena. Also, a cow costume. It's funny you mention it because I was on a Norwegian TV show where we had to dress. I think it was like a horse, but it's the same kind of concept. And I think you need 2 people for that kind of costume. One Anna in itself cannot fully represent a cow. We need pictures. Uh, I believe there are pictures somewhere. The program is called Huskestue, and it's like a family friendly quiz show. It was kind of funny, but at the same time, it's hilarious to see the lengths people are willing to go to be on TV. Myself, obviously included. Video of people in a zebra costume running in front of a lions in the savannah. Man, it's incredible that any boys make it to age 40. We're so stupid. Okay, F4 was played. He absolutely had to do that though. And now she needs to play this B4 move. I think after B4, I think he's gonna take. Like people below, I want to say like 2200, they're not comfortable sacrificing pawns. So I think he's gonna take to avoid the pressure from the queen and pawn. And if he takes here, that's very good for us because it opens up for the rook to influence the game. Okay, b4, that's the move. That's the one we're hoping for. 29. 23 on the clock. Ricardo is playing very quickly now. I gotta say, the pace he's had in what is a super complicated position, it seems like he's the kind of guy who thrives in these tricky situations. The computer's been unhappy about his play because it feels like objectively it's gone from better for white strategically to now white being down a pawn, and the computer's not seeing enough justification for that pawn. But at the same time, like he's putting a lot of pressure. Anna's position is very uncomfortable. Her king is unsafe. White has a plan of going towards the h4 pawn in time. The knight is very powerful in the center and well protected. Yeah, I don't know. I, I kind of think I would prefer the white pieces here, even though the computer says black is better. My instinct is that this feels pretty nice for white. What move could Anna be worried about? I mean, it depends on what she does herself, right? So we've been talking about this pawn to b4, but the disadvantage of that move is that it allows the knight to jump forward in a way it wouldn't be allowed to unless we push the pawn. I think in general, she should be concerned about the queen making its way over here, but the bishop is in the way. So maybe it's not like bishop to a6 makes a lot of sense to me. Also, maybe it makes more sense actually. Because you want to go pawn to b4, but you want to avoid the knight making its way forward as long as possible. Yeah, knight to a6 seems like a good move. But now I'm curious what happens if bishop to d3, moving the bishop away so that the queen may come over here to attack while the bishop itself is also pointing down towards the black king side. Because now you can capture the pawn in the center, but if you do, the queen comes in, attacks the knight, and attacks the pawn on h4. And sure, you can protect your knight, and you're still up a pawn, but now the queen has come over to the side where the king is, and there are quite a few concerns here with the king's safety not being great. Okay, she's about to move. It looks like bishop a6 to me, based on the shape of the hand. What can I say? I'm a pro at interpreting the hand because she was having the hand like this, which is a pretty typical way of moving the bishop. If she was pushing a pawn, she would have been more like this. And moving the knight, she would be kind of like having an open area in the direction she would be moving the knight or shuffling the knight. You know, you can become good at this too with a couple of decades of experience watching chess. Bishop to a6. I'm a fan of this move. I think it's a good one. But the key here is that if white goes bishop to d3, which is the variation I was showcasing earlier, it's very important that we do not capture the pawn on d4. Because then bringing the queen over is seriously good for white. Instead, here, pawn to b4 is the way to play. And then after the trade, the knight moves out on the edge. Oh, man. Pawn to b3. That's a sick move. Pawn to b3, sacrificing that pawn. But when the pawn is captured, that means the queen no longer has access over here on the king side. So then you can capture the pawn in the center, because now the queen cannot come in with the attack against the knight and against the pawn. Okay, that's kind of advanced, but in general, I'm liking the position. I think Anna has the advantage actually with her extra pawn because white has a tough time getting their queen over to this other side. Although he can go queen here though. Attacking the knight, and if we try and chase it away while preserving the protection here, then he can go queen back here. And we have no way of protecting this pawn afterwards. Yeah, this seems kind of scary. Okay. The king is generally unsafe, but she has an extra pawn, and it means that it's her opponent that has to justify his pawn sacrifice. So sometimes it's good being in a situation where your opponent is the one feeling the pressure because they are the ones feeling like I have to do something, otherwise I'm just down a pawn for no good reason. So computer believes it's equal. I think in practical play, black is better because, well, when you move your bishop to a square that's so obviously there's a black pawn blocking its path, there's no doubt that she's planning to go pawn to b4 afterwards, right? And we said it on the previous move. If she doesn't go pawn to b4 soon, she's in big trouble. But by going with a bishop to a6, she's clearly indicating that she's going to go pawn b4 next. So I'm not concerned that she's on the wrong path. She is going to push this pawn forward. And she has an extra pawn. Her king is not safe, so it's a very tricky position, but it is generally sound for her. Okay, I gotta take a little break because my eyes are kind of watery. But I'll be back quicker than Ricardo makes his move. That's my guess anyway. Okay, I'm back. And speaking of people being back, tomorrow's game, we will have Pia commentating on the game. But keep in mind, if you want to watch her return, it is going to require getting up, or I guess depending on your time zone, being ready quite a bit earlier in the day than you've been used to so far. Because tomorrow's round is a morning round, 10 a.m. local time in Portugal. That's 11 a.m. Central European and 5 a.m. Eastern. Will they get up to grab a coffee or go to the toilet? Are they allowed to talk to other people walking around? So, back in the day, it used to be very common talking to your friends during the game. Because people wasn't really concerned about outright cheating, because it was a civilized world back then. In theory, you're not supposed to talk to anyone during your game, and that has become a lot stricter in the past 2 years than it was previously. And the world of chess in general has been infected with a lot of distrust that wasn't there previously. So, getting a coffee, going to the bathroom, that's completely fine. But talking with your friends, not so much. Cheating kind of required someone good enough to know the right move. Computers changed that. Yeah, but we still had computers that were better than most people, 20 years ago. So it's not just the computer development, it's the distrust that I think is the major difference now compared to, say, 10 years ago. Previously, chess players kind of trusted each other in that you would respect the game and not cheat, and that's not really a thing anymore. Honestly, I think part of what changed is that online tournaments started getting quite significant prices, and then people started cheating online. And once a cheater, there becomes uh, a general suspicion that if someone's willing to cheat online, what's stopping them from cheating over the board as well? What do you think White should do in this position? Well, I think queen maneuvering, trying to get over to the king side, makes a lot of sense to me. I also talked about this bishop to d3 move, but I think we looked at a variation where that ended up being very, very good for black. I think in general, white has somewhat of a difficult choice here. And it's good for Anna that she has a plan that she's basically going to execute no matter what. Like, she's going to play pawn to b4, and there's frankly nothing her opponent can do to stop it. Anna can pre-move b4. I mean, I wouldn't pre-move because there are moves like queen to f5 that creates an attack on the knight. So there are moves where something other than b4 is right. But even with the queen coming in here, after you chase the queen away, then you have to go b4. So it's definitely coming within the next two moves. Maybe not one move, but definitely two. What would stop a player from going to the bathroom and checking their mobile and see how they're doing or what move to make? Um, that if they're caught, they would not be allowed to play chess again. But that's part of the reason why the most frequent cheating you will see on chess.com and probably elsewhere as well is going to be people who don't really have that much to lose in terms of they're not actual chess players. I think the most frequent cheating on chess.com is like people who barely know how to play the game. Because if they get kicked out, they kind of feel like they have nothing to lose. The most difficult cheating to discover is the grandmasters. But part of what makes, them not cheat is part morals. I feel like we sometimes forget that just because you can cheat doesn't mean you're gonna. Because while maybe it's becoming less common than it was, there are still moral people out there. And grandmasters have a lot to lose. If you're banned from ever playing chess again as a grandmaster, that's a bigger detriment to your life than some guy who will just start cheating in a different game, Fortnite next. There are many titled players banned every year on chess.com. Yeah, but there are fewer grandmasters banned than there are other titles. And also, there are way more non titled players cheating than titled. Partly because the non titled player pool is so much larger, but also partly because, as I'm saying, the non titles don't feel like they have anything to lose. How often has a grandmaster been banned for life? To my knowledge, that has not happened. Is becoming a grandmaster worth it? I mean, it's worked out fine for me. But I would say I am one of the luckier ones, managing to make a living from chess despite not being good enough to compete at it. Is cheating the reason chess.com gives you points back? I believe so, yes. But it's not going to be a lot of points though. But it kind of feels good that you're getting a couple of points back just because it's a way for them to inform people that we are taking this seriously and we are discovering stuff without you necessarily noticing it yourself. Does online cheating transfer to an over the board ban as well? No. Chess.com and the World Chess Federation don't share cheating information. Um, But chess.com, for instance, is very secretive on their anti-cheating methods. So it would be strange for the World Chess Federation to just accept their assessment if they don't have access to the proof behind. Have you ever cheated? Um, yes. When I was I think I was like 12 or something, I would play these 15-minute games on ICC, the Internet Chess Club, which was the number one chess site at that time. And I would copy all of my moves into some chess engine I had somehow managed to download. Um, but it was not a very good chess engine. Not that it excuses anything, but yeah, 12-year-olds they do stupid things. The thing about that story is that at some point I decided, okay, I'm gonna play these games myself instead. And once I did, I actually gained a lot of rating. So I was playing better. Maybe faster, maybe better than the engine. The engine held you back? Yeah, I don't know. Did you grow up after being 12 years old? I like to think I did, yeah. But you be the judge. Probably stopped losing on time after having to stop and copy all those moves. Yeah, something like that. Well, the thing is, it's incredibly difficult to catch someone cheating, especially if the engine they're using to cheat is weaker than their real play. So, like, I don't think there's any chance I would have gotten caught when I gained rating once I stopped cheating. You can't catch that. Will you be doing commentary on the Olympiad in September? Yes. So this is my final day for the MAIA Chess Open, but I'll be back in just 15 days. September 11th, first round of the Chess Olympiad, where both Pia and Anna are playing for the Swedish team. I don't think we're getting cameras for that because the Olympiad is really strict on electronics and anti-cheating and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, we're getting two games to follow. So pluses and minuses. There were general cameras on four sets of tables in India. Yeah, but those were like the top teams. Um, and I'm not sure they're necessarily willing to do the same for a private company Swedish women's team kind of thing. I guess FIDE is willing to do anything depending on how much they're getting paid. But I think Anna is not interested in paying the amounts that the World Chess Federation necessarily may require in order to do a whole camera setup. I guess what I'm saying is that they would need to control the camera themselves and wouldn't allow Anna to do it herself like she's doing in these tournaments she's playing. And that would require extra resources on their end. Did this guy leave the table? No, I mean, he's sitting and thinking. He's at the board. But it's a tricky decision to make because he knows what's coming, but it's not clear how he deals with this in the best possible way. My suggestion is going after this pawn, but that has its cons as well. Is that a static image? Yes, I think it is. We're creating the illusion of someone there. Oh my gosh. Did not see that one coming, that's for sure. There can be no doubt that this guy has an attacker's heart. What a move. And I think my first instinct here is that if we take en passant, then the recapture would be good for Anna, because then, you know, her opponent's king safety has been weakened, and it's not easy for the opponent to attack down here. But if Anna takes en passant now, he's going to go rook to f3. He's going to try and get his rook pointing down here. And if we can continue capturing, he's going to recapture it, and suddenly he's going to have two rooks pointing down the G file. And that looks super scary. So, order number one of business, do not take this pawn. White is kind of trying to get rid of their own pawn in order to use their rooks attacking down on the king. But if we do nothing, then this pawn is continuing its journey forward, once again trying to get itself captured, essentially, because it knows that if it's captured, that's going to open up for the rooks to try and attack in towards the white king. And this is game over. Knight takes. Wow. I was going to say queen up, but the computer says king h1, winning the game. If we try to hide the king as well, then this rook goes after this one and the other rook, so that you can have two rooks pointing down. Wow, g4 is an incredibly inventive move. Okay, I assume Anna is going to play b4 because, well, that was clearly what she was planning with that bishop to a6 thing. And even though this move attacks the knight, I'm not sure he's going to move the knight. Because what are you guys thinking about this g5 move? And if we take the knight, he takes on our knight, and then he gets a pawn dangerously close to our king. The bishops are pointing towards each other. And if we just continue capturing, then he can trade, move the queen over. And then once again, king h1 is the killer move, allowing the rook to join the queen in this attack. GG's. Wow, G4. That's incredible. What a move. Computer doesn't like it, but I'm a fan. It for a second time now in the game, he's played a move that gets a question mark from the engines, but I think they're really inventive ways of maximizing the pressure on the opponent. The threat of pawn to g5 is seriously uncomfortable, especially the fact that he can ignore the threat on his own knight and just continue forward himself. And here the computer is saying capturing is the best move. But I'm like, if you take this guy, you allow the rook access down the F file. That seems incredibly dangerous. Huh. And Anna doesn't have a lot of time to figure out all of these complications. We talked about it previously this tournament, and I'm going to repeat it again now. Games are decided between moves 20 and 40. And we talked about how she should have a little bit of time remaining for those critical decisions. But here we are with 22 moves remaining until move 40, when she gets an additional 30 minutes on her clock. And she has to navigate a tremendously tricky situation with less than a minute on average. She gets an extra 30 seconds per move though, but so technically right now she's on a minute and a half per move on average. But yeah, knowing her, that's not going to be the case for too long. She'll be under 10 minutes after this move. You might be right. Okay, so the reason the computer hates this is pawn to c5. And it actually makes a lot of sense. Because now if this pawn is captured, the queen comes in with a check. That's not the key though. The key is that after the king moves away, after this g4 move has been played, it's much easier to try and attack the king. You can go pawn to d4, and then the bishop can go back and put some pressure in towards the king now that the king's safety with a pawn on g4 is no longer available. In addition, you're attacking the knight, and the knight cannot move because of the threat to the queen. But the thing is, the queen can move up and attack, counterattack. And you take theirs, they take yours. And like, this queen is attacking 3 things at once. So it doesn't feel like super safe. But the computer is finding some clever ways of defending everything. Okay, so c5. We said that she was definitely going to play b4 within the next 2 moves. That's no longer a certainty. Because after this g4 move, she's actually in a big rush to create counter threats before the pawn continues its attack. So after c5, if white just follows up, oh god, this is super scary. The knight can come in, take the pawn, and attack the queen. But then you can give up the rook on the knight so that the queen is no longer under attack. After pawn takes, then you take the knight. Oh gosh, you can even go pawn to g6, ignoring the knight, ignoring the threat to your knight, but creating a pressure here. And if this pawn is captured, the queen comes in with the checkmate. King goes to the corner, it gets trapped. King stays in the middle, it still gets checkmated. And if the pawn captures the knight, then the pawn comes in with the fork on the king and rook. Oh god. Navigating this with 17 minutes left is a freaking nightmare. Same mate from earlier? Yeah, you noticed that, Pan. It's a typical thing that patterns you see earlier in the game is also discovering the possible patterns in the game is kind of important because even if they don't work now, they could be important later on. These sort of calculations are what Anna lives for. Yeah, but I think she would prefer doing them at home with an infinite amount of time on her clock. I suspect she's not doing calculation exercises with time restrictions based on what I've seen from her. Okay, she does go c5. That's the best move. Great move. Maybe that was her plan all along. I assumed when she went bishop to a6, I assumed it was to push this pawn forward. But here she actually couldn't go pawn to c5 because that would leave the pawn on b5 undefended while also putting a threat on her queen. So the point of bishop to a6 could have been to just protect this pawn in order to go pawn c5 afterwards. And now after g4, he created an extra circumstance where it's extra good to play this c5 move because you have those potential threats if the king tries to hide in the corner. And now this is still a sacrifice of the pawn on b5, but now instead of the knight just attacking the queen and the queen having to move, the bishop can take out the knight. And after the recapture, instead of moving the rook that's under attack, you get to capture a very important central pawn because you're threatening the queen. Yeah, I think that might be the winning move. g4 was a very cool idea, but c5 kind of just busts it. I think to me, the big question here is the move g5. But g5 is not even on the top 3 list from the computer, which is a good sign to begin with. Ooh, very interesting. Bishop to d3 is the computer's third choice, which is a sick move because it just leaves everything ready to be captured. But the idea is that as long as you get your queen over pointing down on the king, it doesn't matter if you're down 2 pawns because your attack is so strong. And you have this plan for eliminating the pawn afterwards. Oh, this is crazy. Computer's recommending bishop takes bishop, allowing the knight to be captured with a check. Your only way of preventing checkmate is moving the bishop back, but then the bishop gets captured by the strong knight. If you take the knight back, then the queen comes in with checkmate because you have the support of the pawn. But this is still good for black because of king moving. And the idea is that if the knight moves to save itself, then the rook comes over and you're pointing down on the queen and king. What a position. So even a move like bishop to d3 is super scary. Basically anything that allows the white queen to get over pointing down towards the black king is concerning. Let's look at this pawn to g5 again. Because, yeah, you cannot take this because that would open up too much power from the rook. In fact, wow. Computer's saying the best move here is not to recapture, but rather sacrificing your knight, luring the king to the same file as the rook. And then after pawn takes, knight takes back. The key is that now this king is in trouble because the bishop comes in. The bishop cannot be captured due to the pressure from the rook on the king, which is why we lured the king there to begin with. And if the king tries to hide in towards the corner, then the queen comes check, and then the rook comes in, and that's the game. Yeah, I'm not really doing any of these variations for people to learn anything. This is just sometimes you just have to be fascinated by the possibilities. So after pawn to g5, the best move is knight captures because that attacks the queen. But then if rook takes, there's no attack on the queen anymore. But when the pawn recaptures, we do get the pressure on the knight. Without this threat to the knight, this would be game over. And then after pawn takes, like white has two knights in trade for a rook, which is kind of a good trade. So the only way to justify black's plan is to just keep capturing stuff. And here, king h1. Trying to get the rook involved. And if the queen just takes the pawn? Check? We can hide in the corner, no? Oh, damn! I thought we could hide in the corner. I thought we had enough pieces around the king, but the knight sacrifices itself, forcing the queen back. And when the queen is back, there's no pressure here. So the queen comes in, check. You can sacrifice your pawn, doesn't change anything. And if the king moves up, then the bishop comes in for the checkmate. That is so sick. Okay, we have moves on the board. Bishop takes b5 has been played. Computer says big mistake. Anna pretty quickly captures on d4. She's attacking the queen and the bishop, ignoring the threat on her own rook. The only move I'm scared about here is queen to g2. Queen here just completely giving up this bishop. But then after pawn to g5, it looks kind of scary because the queen is about to be involved in the attack against the king. Computer says Anna is winning here, but only with one move. She has to go pawn to h3. No idea why. And if the queen just remains pointing down on the king, now you can capture. Whereas if you captured earlier, it was terrible. I have no. Why does it matter where this pawn is? Okay. He sacrifices his rook. He sacrifices the rook in order to eliminate the threat on the queen. But now, surely it's game over. Everything is under attack. But the pawn is attacking here. The bishop is attacking here. And if this bishop captures the rook, then Anna can just recapture. And now her bishop is attacking the rook and the pawn is attacking the knight. And her king is safe. That's the most important part also. His plan to create the attack against the black king has not been successful. And instead, he's been caught in a very tricky skirmish in the center of the board. But he wanted things to be happening on the king side, not in the center. And he paid too much attention to the back and forths instead of continuing his attack. Knight back doesn't defend the last position. Maybe Anna would still be up a pawn. She's up a pawn right now. And computer's saying like she's completely winning. And she still has 16 minutes left. So we were concerned about her time usage, but now with a winning position in 16 minutes, her time is looking comfortable again. This is what I'm telling you. At the end of the day, it's more important making good moves than how much time you spend. It's just very difficult to balance the good moves versus too much time spent. But some of the time it's worth investing in the situation because one little mistake will turn everything around. And that's what happened here. She spent time on the c5 move and everything prior. But by spending time finding the good moves, she spent 30% of her remaining time on this move. But it was so worth it. Because once he makes a mistake, that means Anna is allowed to make her moves quickly. She played knight takes here and pawn takes back almost instantly. So time management, it's not just about not using time. It's about using time in the right situations. And today, I'm unhappy with her time management when she spent 10 minutes on this knight to a6 and then 5 minutes on knight to c7. That was not good because these were moves she was clearly planning to play anyway. But then spending time on this b5 move made sense because she had to abandon her plan A. Spending time on g5, obviously she had to do that. That was super tricky and it's weakening her king. And then she spent some time on this. Well, she basically then didn't spend too much time since she played c5, but the c5 move was enabling her to get a winning situation. Okay, he doesn't take the rook. He takes the bishop instead, surprising. Anna has to decide whether she wants to take the knight or the bishop. But in either case, she will be up a rook and a pawn against either a knight or a bishop. I think she should go with the knight. And the key is that she then gets pressure against the bishop. And if the bishop moves, the queen is able to give a check on this king while also putting pressure in towards the pawn. Okay, she took the bishop instead. Okay, I don't like that. I would have taken the knight. Okay, he's definitely gonna go knight e2. Oh, this is why she took the bishop. Because she has seen that knight to e2, which is the only sensible move here. Then black has this knight takes g4 move, exploiting the fact that, yeah, the pawn was defended by the white knight, but if the knight captures, that would open up for the rook to take on this e2 square. Although it's kind of shaky with the check on the king. Now the king can just move. It's fine. Oh, but then there's another check. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, now he goes g5. He should have done that a couple of moves ago. He should have done that instead of he should have just done it right after he played g4. It was a lot more dangerous before we got all the trades we've had the last couple of moves. Computer's third choice here is to go pawn h3. Okay, just take the knight, surely. Just get everything traded. Takes, and then the queen comes back into defense. And we had a variation previously where we got checkmated here, but this is very different than that. In fact, computer just wants to sacrifice the rook against the knight to get rid of some of white's potential attacking ideas. Check, and then wow, computer's even saying rook g5. That's wild. Allowing the rook to be captured, but then you just recapture, and you have so many pawns. Okay, she's taken the knight. She's gonna win this game. It's been a good one. He takes the knight as well. And now I think this pawn is so dangerous. Just take it off the board. No reason to let this pawn live. In fact, if she captures now the pawn on b2, it's immediately checkmate. Queen comes in, check on the king, and then the queen comes up for the checkmate. So he has a checkmate threat in 2 moves. But by eliminating the pawn, Anna also eliminates the key player in those attacking ideas. Computer says pawn to h3 is also okay, but seems very unnecessary letting this guy live. Just take it. She could be considering check and then queen takes here. But then, yeah, she still gets checkmated. The king hides, then knight comes in here for a checkmate. And if the king moves to the center, the knight also comes in with a checkmate. Being greedy, going after the pawn, either with the queen check or without, leads to checkmate. She needs to eliminate the pawn, and she does. Oh, sorry, misclick. Yeah, this is over. She's even got 13 minutes, and her opponent is frankly running out of attacking pieces. He's a wild player. I think he's showcased some really interesting attacking ideas, but now there's a lack of attacking pieces remaining. Okay, Anna has 1 pawn and a rook in trade for a knight. And even if she blunders now, this is a really good sign when even the blunders give her a winning position. Because one of the natural things to do here is move the king into the corner to kind of get it out of the way so that you can try using your rooks to get some checks on the king. This is a blunder because of knight takes f7, exploiting the fact that the queen cannot capture the knight due to the pressure from the queen on the king. But it's not a massive issue because the king can just move to protect the queen and counterattack on the knight. I mean, it would be preferable not doing this, but even the blunders are winning, which feels good. Computer top choice is queen to f5. The idea is that you protect this diagonal so that your king can be safe on h7. In addition, you then enable yourself to use your pawn to kick the knight out of its central placement. Plus, if your opponent tries to hide the king in order to have the rook pointing down, you can always use your queen to chase the king back into the open so that the rook cannot. So queen f5 is just completely over. Can you just sack the rook for the knight? No, she's only up by a pawn. So if she gives up the rook for the knight, the rook endgames with an extra pawn are, well, it's just a draw, says the computer. And part of the reason for that is that none of her pawns can defend each other. So she needs to keep her rook versus knight advantage. Okay, this is fine. She's chasing the queen away. If the queen tries to keep this diagonal, then she probably wants. Okay, this doesn't work because then there's an attack here. Okay, if the queen moves up, maybe she'll just have her rook attack in towards the white king. That makes sense. And if the queen tries to preserve that, keep control of the c2 square, now she can go tuck her king in the corner. Because now there's no threats on the diagonal. She is losing the pawn in the middle, though. Okay, he does go queen d3. Queen f5 would have been a lot more effective than this, because it would have allowed to kick back the very dangerous knight. And now moving the queen is not really an option anymore. I guess she's going to move her king, but she is going to lose this pawn. Yeah, it's not completely over yet. As long as the queens are on the board, Black's king is a little uncomfortable. And also, as long as the knight is this well placed, that helps making the king uncomfortable. Rook b8. Yeah, that makes sense. Although, if you do this, are you afraid of the knight coming in, giving a check on the, well, not check, putting pressure on the queen and the rook? And then if the queen moves to get a check, king moves. And now there's still the threat on the rook, and if the rook moves away, then your queen gets caught on the same file as the king. Wow, computer has a very nice solution to this. Computer says you just capture the pawn with the idea that if the rook tries to get the queen and the king on the same file, you just sacrifice your queen and then you have the double rook checkmate idea. That's very clever. Yeah, okay, rook b8 is good, but it requires some tricky calculation. Is she getting any more time? Yeah, she gets an additional 30 seconds per move she makes. And in addition, she's going to get an additional 30 minutes when she reaches move 40. There's another 15 moves for that to happen. Computers are very good at winning good positions, Silver, but humans not so much. Plus, computers have gotten ridiculously strong the last couple of years, which creates a bit of a problem because what it now considers completely obvious is becoming less and less obvious for people. Because previously the computers were very good at seeing like 10 moves ahead, but now it's incredibly good at seeing 16 moves ahead. And at the end of the day, every chess position is deterministic in that it's either a win, a draw, or a loss with perfect play. We don't know because we haven't solved the game, but we know that objectively every position has a solution. And now that the computers are getting closer and closer to being able to kind of crack the game, it means also that computers are way more one-sided in their evaluations. It means that the computer can say something is equal, even though it's super tricky for one side, because the computer is able to understand that, yeah, it looks bad, but you can survive. And similarly, and maybe the biggest problem is that the computer will say something is equal in every circumstance, which makes it really hard to know whether something is better for white or for black, or how much better it is, because the computer just keeps saying everything is equal, despite some things being a lot simpler than others. So personally, I think for chess commentary, it makes some sense, not in every circumstance, but or like in doing opening work for chess these days, it makes sense having a slightly weaker engine, because the slightly weaker engines are more likely to say something is a small advantage for this and that, while the stronger, newer engines will very often say everything is equal or everything is winning. If two computers played each other, does white always win? If two computers play each other, it's almost always a draw. But that's why computer tournaments, they don't play usually from the starting position. They only play from positions where one player has an advantage, and then they play one game with white and one game with black. And you need to do it this way because otherwise everything would just be a draw. But if you give them some tricky, unusual starting situations, that is the best way of figuring out which computer is actually better, because it tests them in different unusual circumstances, and just instead of just letting them play a lot of draws and solid openings. Do you think if chess was solved, the cow would be a forced win or forced loss? Well, it would not be a forced win, I'll tell you that. Most things would be a forced draw, or not forced, but objectively draw, right? But the cow, I think, is so bad that I think the cow, if chess is solved, the cow would be losing. How about the W opening? I mean, I have said that the W is better than the cow, but the W also is so bad that it would be considered a loss if chess is solved, is my guess. Okay, Anna has doubled her rooks, and this is very good because she's about to start an attack against the white king herself. Her opponent put the king into the corner to enable the rook to give a check. And we're kind of scared of this, no? This is very scary. Because if Anna moves her king to the corner, can her opponent just sacrifice? Oh no, he can't sacrifice. Because I was thinking if queen recaptures, then the queen comes in here, check, and then check, and you can't really get away from these checks. But she can always recapture with a rook. But this creates an interesting situation that if her opponent now goes check and she moves her king to the corner, if he then starts pushing this pawn to try and get a new queen, rook to c1 would be a terrible mistake because now the rook is no longer protecting here. Also, like, how would she deal with this move? Because then this guy pointing in towards the queen. Yeah. Yeah, computer is still saying, completely winning. But there are some tricks remaining in the position, that's for sure. She's got 5 minutes left. 27 moves have been executed. Not a lot of time. As long as she doesn't blunder, she's going to win this game. As long as she gets her king to safety, this is all good. But for now, that king is not safe. Okay, the check has come. She's moving her king to the corner. Okay, I guess the only move I'm concerned about is queen to d4. Man, and he plays it basically instantly. Okay, computer says rook g8 is the winning move. But then that kind of doesn't make sense given that her previous move was moving the rook over here to double the rooks. But rook g8 is good because then the knight cannot move and create an attack on the queen. If the knight captures this pawn with check, the rook can come in and defend the queen. Life is good. And if the knight tries to go here, check, and attacking the queen, once again, the rook can recapture. That's why this move was so important. We need to be able to protect our queen in case of some of these checks. This is actually super dangerous. If she goes with a king away from this diagonal, then her opponent can just give a check. There's nothing better than returning with a king and then queen d4. In fact, wow. Rook to f8 and rook to g8 are the only winning moves in this position. She's about to move already and she's going after her rook. I think she's understood that she needs to protect her queen. She needs to make this rook able to protect. She plays rook g8. Let's go. That's the game. That's the game right there. That is the move she needed. And with this move, she's keeping her king safe. She's preventing all the knight moves, traps, trying to get the attack on the queen. And now either her opponent needs to trade the rooks, after which she's safe, Or he has to move the rook out of the way to avoid the trade. And then she has this rook to c4 move. Okay, never mind. Yeah, because then the trickery with the threat against the queen and the king reemerges. Okay. Well, this is a good start. Good start. And then he's gonna have to avoid the trade in order to keep as many complications on the board as possible. But the fact that she found this super important move in just a minute and 30 seconds is a really, really good sign. If the rook moves, maybe she just goes pawn h3. Because she could start creating some checkmating attack against the opponent's king too. In fact, maybe she just goes queen back. Yeah, queen back. That's gonna end the game. She's just gonna if the rook moves away, then Anna is gonna be the one using this G file for an attack. And the benefit of moving the queen back is also that now there are no tricks where the queen is poorly defended. He goes for the trade, but that eliminates one of his most important attacking pieces. And it gives her an easy move. And now h3 is still a great move. In fact, it's even better than it was earlier. Because now pawn to h3 would just instantly threaten checkmate. Yeah, no, he doesn't have anything. He can try and give a check, but then the queen just blocks. If the queen moves away, then the rook comes in and it's checkmate. If the queen moves over here, then we have this h3 idea. He cannot really take it because then the rook comes in. Checkmate. He can't really do anything. The queen has to stay. He can try getting a new queen, but then we have a very nice rook coming in, sacrificing itself to lure the queen away from the white king. And then the queen comes in with the protection of the pawn. This pawn on h3 is super powerful. Turns out having those doubled isolated pawns on the edge of the board worked out pretty well. The h4 pawn may become the hero in the end. Okay. She's got this one in the bag. 94.3 accuracy. Is that pretty good? She had some wayward plans in the opening, but other than that, she's played this very well. +90 is good. I remember in the Pro Chess League, which was like 15-minute games, I led some of the accuracy ratings at some point with, I think I had like 95.5. Just, a convenient opportunity to mention that. Queen takes pawn in the center. Weird flex. It's not weird. Wanting to, boast. The most natural human instinct ever. But now, queen takes pawn is going to decide the game. Capture the pawn, and if the queen comes in, check on the king, pressure on the rook. The king moves, and it doesn't matter that you lose the rook, because bam! All this game, we've been thinking the black king is under attack. And in the end, it's the white king that's trapped in the corner. She can also give a check first and then take the pawn. Then she doesn't have to lose the rook. But taking the pawn is more stylish, and that's what she does. Are we going to see a checkmate on the board? I think chess should, in general, have more checkmates. People have a tendency of always resigning right before the final move. But let's see that checkmate. Live by the sword, die by the sword. There's something to that, Madison. And also, this guy, you can just tell he's an honorable attacker. He went all out on the attack with some very creative ideas. The guy respects an attack, and though I feel like those people are the most likely to allow a checkmate. Jarsky with the 10 gifted. Let's go. Are we pre-celebrating? No one's going to call a jinx on this. It's too obvious that this is going the right way. 4 minutes left on the clock. Didn't even get into time pressure. So long as Anna is above 1 minute on the clock, doesn't count. Oh, he resigns. No checkmate, but a well-executed game, no doubt. A reminder to everyone that tomorrow's round starts real early. In fact, only another 15 hours to the start. 11 a.m. Central European Time, 10 a.m. local time in Portugal, and 5 a.m. Eastern. Is 11 really early? It depends. It's a lot earlier than chess players usually enjoy playing chess. Let's put it like that. Doesn't give a lot of time to prepare for the game. Barsh with a 10 gifted. Let's go. Okay. While we see Anna discussing the game with her opponent, we're going to do a little time traveling. Because we have the winner of this game on the line. Tomorrow is the only morning round? No, the final round is also in the morning. So 6th round and the 9th round. Shouldn't the white king be placed somewhere else? When both the kings are placed on dark squares, it means that black has won. If one king is on white and one king is on black, it means that it was on a draw. And if both kings are on the light squares, it means that white won. Hello.
Hey. Hey.
How are you feeling?
Good. I won.
Yeah.
I was a bit confused about what was going on in the game, to be honest. In the middle game, there were so many pieces, and I was a little bit confused about what was happening. But I thought after c5 I was winning. Like I couldn't really understand what he was gonna do. At first, I was gonna play b4, but then I was like, doesn't c5 just win? And then I played c5. But I don't know if he has anything.
Yeah, no, after c5, you have a really good position. No doubt about that. We were looking
Right?
at c5, g5. And there's some craziness. Knight
Yeah, I was
takes
looking at that.
pawn, and then rook takes knight.
Yes, pawn takes. Wait, I want to see if I figure this out. Knight takes pawn, rook takes pawn, c takes, and then where do you want to go?
Yeah, king h1 was what the computer suggested.
Okay, I didn't look at king h1. But sacrificing the knight on c3?
What do you mean?
Isn't there a knight on c3?
I assumed you took it after I took the knight on f6.
Oh, you've already taken. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Bam, 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 bam. And then queen takes f6?
Well, you have to take the knight. And then after king h1, you're saying queen takes f6, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing here was that queen takes f6 crazily is actually a losing move because after rook to g1 check, if the king goes to the right, then the knight is able to do a fork on the king and queen with knight to d7.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you want to hide in the corner, right? Which is what you did in the game. But here, contrary to what happened in the game, you can sacrifice the knight on the f7 pawn without you having the rook to recapture. And after queen takes knight, the queen captures on c3, attacks in the diagonal. And you can't actually shut down this diagonal. And if you move the king up, the bishop comes. Actually, the bishop doesn't come in because then you can block with your rook. But computer says even though white is down a rook, bishop h5 is the winning move. Yeah, no, let's just say it was a crazy position. I really thought his g4 move was super interesting, but your g5 was excellent in response and he just collapsed. But we've been looking at some really interesting computer lines, but having to deal with that over the board is a completely different beast.
Yeah, that is so crazy. But c5 was good then, right? It was better than b4.
Yeah, c5 was best. And it made it very difficult for him to find the right moves, right? So partly a move is good because a move can be good because it's good because the computer says it's good, but a move can also be good because it makes the opponent's moves more difficult. And in this
I got
case,
so scared.
It was both of them.
Oh, it was yeah. That's good. Yeah, because I could tell from his face that he didn't really know exactly what to do. He seemed a bit shocked when I played c5, and he told me after the game that he hadn't really looked at it that much, so he didn't really see that was the critical line, I think. But I was so scared when he did this whole thing with the rook, knight, and queen trying to win my queen. At first, I didn't see rook g8, and I was like, wait a second, like what do I do here? Like this is so scary. But then I found the idea with rook g8, but I got so scared for a second.
Yeah. No, understandably, right? Because it was legitimately dangerous. You only have 2 winning moves in that position. But you played rook g8 in like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult decisions you're doing. But are you saying that you saw it ahead of time before you put your king in the corner?
No, I just saw it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was an important move.
Yeah. I mean, but it was the only move, no? Like, what do I do otherwise?
Actually, you can also play rook f8, but that's kind of freaky.
Because knight g6 pawn takes, and it's defended. Okay, but like, what else do I do? Like, Rook G8 it just works, right? Like, I didn't have to
Yeah, yeah.
calculate so much. I just saw that Rook G8 worked.
No, Rook G8 is way better than Rook F8.
Yeah. So, Hammer, are you saying that I'm taking a lot of time on easy decisions and little time on difficult ones?
I'm just saying that I haven't really discovered the pattern to what you find difficult in chess. Because you're finding some difficult moves quickly, and then you're spending a lot of time on some easy moves. And I
Okay, so
haven't
that
watched
is
enough of your play to fully understand your strengths and weaknesses. There just seems to be some irregularity in what
okay.
you find tricky.
I understand that. I understand that. I agree. I will be honest with you, Hammer. Today I was so tired because I couldn't sleep last night. So I fell asleep at like 7, 8 a.m. It was so bad. I had such bad insomnia. In the beginning of the game, I was almost falling asleep by the board. Like the reason I was taking so long in certain moves was because I was so tired. Like I was really tired, and I was trying to like walk up to kind of walk around, but I was so tired. So I think when it got to like the critical moments, I just got really excited because I thought that I only had certain choices, and then I was more focused and I had to find the right choices. So maybe it's a lack of focus.
Yeah, but you're saying today is an extraordinary day and shouldn't be used as a judgment of on your regular play.
I guess. I guess. Yeah, I guess. And I guess also it's when I feel like there's a lot of choices, I think more because it's so much fun. Like I have so many different options. I can go like,
Yeah, no,
oh,
I'm
I can
I'm
do all
I'm
these things.
fine with your time. Like you're using a bit much time, but the moments you choose to spend time today, I think makes sense, right? Because you're
Okay.
spending 15 minutes on B5, but that makes sense because you cannot play knight to E6, which is kind of like the obvious choice. And B5 is,
Yeah.
quite a weakening move, so it's not something you want to do without feeling it's necessary. And then you play G5, which I to be fair, I didn't think it was a good move because it's weakening your king, but it's a move that you put some time into, and that
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. And then you spend
Hmm.
some time on knight e6, fine, and then you spend 10 minutes on c5, which was basically what won you the game, right? So the only
Yeah.
things I kind of react to as far as your time management goes is 10 minutes for knight a6. Can
Okay.
you honestly tell me that you didn't know after 5 seconds that that was the move you were gonna make?
Well, okay, so listen, Hammer, I understand what you're trying to say here, but I was thinking, what if the knight belongs to d7, f8, and then g6?
Yeah, I noticed how you didn't do that though.
Well, because I realized it wasn't maybe that good. Yeah, I don't know. That is true. I think in like the beginning of the game, my problem is that I think that I have endless time. I'm like, oh, 1 hour 30, so much time, yay! And then, but yeah, I should. That's a good point. I should make those moves a lot faster.
No, but that being said, the knight is better on d7.
What?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that you cannot go knight e6 because that would allow him to go knight e5. So the computer at some point thought you were much, much worse. And I think it
Oh, so
has
my
to
opening
do
was just bad?
kind of. The computer just doesn't like putting the knight on a6 when white puts their knight on f3. It's quite a significant difference to compared to having the knight on e2 because your entire plan with knight a6 is usually getting the knight over to the g5 square. But here, anytime you move the knight to e6, you allow knight to e5, after which your position is just awful.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
assuming
yeah.
this is
That's
why you
actually
didn't
a
go
good
knight
point.
e6, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I realized I can't go knight e6. So actually, I felt like my knight was a bit clumsy. Like I didn't really know what the thing was. Yeah, what the thing was with my knight over there. But I just
But
Yeah, I think I
would
was
I
just
be correct in saying that in this variation you prepared, you mostly looked at white putting the knight on e2, like Jen did against you?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then
I kind of figured.
but
No,
yeah,
I
no,
think the placement of the knight was kind of significant. And I don't think this knight a6 plan looks very impressive with white having these knight e5 ideas. But you
okay,
know,
okay, I'll stop
that's a
playing it,
learning
Hammer.
experience.
It is. I'll stop playing it, Hammer. I will only play 96 if they go 92. Yeah, I mixed up the lines, I think. But yeah, that makes sense. Was there anything else that I did wrong during the game? Was G5 bad? Like you said
Um,
you didn't like it, but was it bad?
no, it was not bad.
Why do you sound so sad when you're saying it?
Yeah, because then I have to admit that I'm making, judgment calls that I actually ended up being wrong on.
Okay, so this time I was doing the computer moves and not the hammer moves.
Yeah.
Yes!
I don't know. You said yes when you were doing the hammer moves instead of the computer moves also. I feel like this is inconsistent.
Well, because both cases are good. Either I'm making the moves or GM or of Stockfish. I mean, both instances are good. It's a yes moment for both.
Yeah, fair enough. So long as you don't blunder, right?
Exactly.
What did
Exactly.
you consider if pawn takes on e4?
Uh, Pawn takes on e4. What moment is this?
Right after he went e4.
Oh, I was thinking pawn takes on e4. Then I thought knight takes, and then I wanted to make rook takes work because I thought that if bishop takes f6, rook takes e2, and then queen takes e2, queen takes f6. But then I thought that he goes queen takes e4, and then I was considering g5 in that instance instead, threatening both the bishop and the queen. But then I just thought that g5 in the previous instance was better.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, that variation I think is almost winning for you. Because you're
Oh.
getting the two pieces for the rook. It feels pretty good, in my
But he
opinion.
can take on c6 as well. No?
Yeah,
I was scared of that. I was scared of g5, queen takes c6. I was looking at like rook a6. Or, okay, I guess I can take the bishop as well because everything is defended. So I guess I don't
yeah.
have to go rook a6. So I can take the bishop, but then I thought, I guess b5 isn't hanging. Yeah. I guess sometimes when I don't really understand exactly what's happening in the position, I get kind of worried. But I did see all of this.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
Yeah,
start.
yeah. But so
Well,
this is just much better.
I think so. I think two pieces are generally very, very good. And one of the key things here is that you have the access to the d5 square. So you know you're going to get either a ridiculously good bishop or knight on that square.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really realize that 95 was so strong. Like, I just thought after this whole thing, G5 takes. I just thought that after 95, I could do something like H3, but then I realized that Rook D3 could be strong.
Yeah. Yeah, knight h 95 came as a bit of a surprise to us.
Yeah.
But computer doesn't like it though. It thinks black is better after that.
Yeah.
He is sacrificing a pawn after all.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
in fact, the thing I wanted to ask, because I was thinking pawn to e4 makes the most sense, kind of. No, pawn takes. But the problem is, I think after knight takes on e4, you're doing very good. But the issue is knight to e5. Because now, contrary to the other variations, you cannot take the knight because now he has the rook pointing down on your queen.
Yeah, makes sense. And can I just go something like, can I go G5 there?
Yeah, and then he retreats the bishop, and you're struggling to defend both on c6 and e4.
What if bishop f5? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They
no,
can't
you
see
can
it.
play bishop f5, and it's not obvious that this is bad for black, but computer is very unhappy.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't see this. I don't think you would have seen this
Yeah,
either, to be
no,
honest.
that because that was what I was kind of discussing with chat. Like, I think she's gonna take on e4, and I don't necessarily think he's gonna find knight e5.
Yeah.
But it was a super interesting game. His e4 move and his g4 move were super interesting. Both of them got a question mark from the computer, but it really spiced up the play.
It was a very spicy game. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun today, Hammer. I had a lot of fun, and I hope, Hammer, you've had fun commentating my games.
Yeah, very much so.
This was your last day at this tournament.
It was. Unfortunately, I'm missing out on the rest now that we have an early game tomorrow. That was absolutely not calculated whatsoever. And I do hope that you get to sleep earlier than 8 a.m. when you have a 10 a.m. round.
Hammer, I am terrified. If I have insomnia today too, I will show up to the game with 0 hours of sleep. It would be absolutely terrible. But I'm sure you will miss commentating the games. Aren't you gonna miss a little bit of Anna chess in your daily routine now these next few days?
Sure, yes. Well, I did kind of postpone other things I needed to do in order to do this. So I should maybe get back on track. But I've had a lot of fun with your chat. They seem reasonably behaved.
They are very behaved. They are very behaved. Hammer, have you been looking at YouTube chat or have you been ignoring YouTube chat?
I would prefer not to answer that question while the YouTube chat is still live. I will say this: if I was instructed to watch YouTube chat, I would have.
Okay, so you're
But
saying it's
I
my
did
fault.
not get that instruction. So if you want to be upset at anyone,
Okay,
that's
so
the one
you're
to
saying
be
that it's
upset
my
with.
fault.
That one.
Okay, all right. Well, don't worry, YouTube chat, you're gonna get a lot of love. I am sure these next few days. I was on YouTube. I came here after being ignored for a whole hour there. Oh no. Well, my mom will be joining from tomorrow. She's finally doing well. She's been watching all the games and she's been saying that she's had a lot of fun hearing your commentary. You know what my mom said, Hammer? She said that you're a very honest person.
Yeah, that
She
has
said
its pros and cons, I can assure you.
she said that she likes how I get roasted here and there by you and how honest you are. And I was like, wait a second, Mom, does this mean that you're roasting me too subconsciously with this? And she didn't want to answer that question. But
I've heard rumors that Pia does a good Anna roast as well.
she does, but she doesn't realize it herself. She has no idea that she's roasting me, which is even worse because it's so honest. You know, this one time you told me this about Anna, you should practice your rooking games. I made a terrible rooking game mistake in Rilton as well. And the first thing, like 2 days later, she said was like, Anna, you will never improve if you don't practice rooking games. And she said this on stream, like fully honestly. And I was like, Mom, this is too soon. And yeah, so I see some similarities between you and Mom.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
I'm gonna let you say goodbye to chat. Goodbye, chat.
chat, say thanks to Hammer for commentating all these days and for doing an amazing job. And for giving me so much chess insight. I feel like I've learned a lot these last few days. So say thanks, Hammer, both on YouTube and Twitch. Say thanks, Hammer, everybody. Thanks, Hammer. Thank you so much, Hammer. You're gonna be commentating as well the Olympiad. So that is the next time we will see you over here. So it's not gonna be that long until we have Hammer back for the Olympiad commentary. Are you excited about that?
I'm not sure I'm still on. Okay, my sound is here. We took off the camera because we thought you were saying goodbye.
Oh no, I'm not seeing the stream. So welcome back, Hammer. Are you excited to commentate my games in the Olympiad?
Yeah. I will look at PS games as well, right?
Exactly. You look at my mom's games too, so it'll be double commentary.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying if I need to if there happens to be a 30-minute intermission for whatever reason, there's
I will
going to
not
be.
think for 30 minutes. I will not. I will not.
You're dangerously close repeatedly, several days in a row. But is that like your hard limit? 30 minutes? That's too much.
I think 25 is going to be my hard limit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we gonna have rounds where? Well, I assume Pia is playing many rounds because the team kind of needs her to win. But it does. I get. Does the Swedish team have more than 4 players? In which case, it's pretty normal to rotate the team.
Okay, Hammer, are you asking if there's going to be rounds where you only commentate my mom's game? I'm sure there will be at some point, but I shall play my very best so that I'm irreplaceable in the team.
Very good.
That's the plan. So yeah, we will see how that goes though. But yeah, okay, Hammer, thank you so much. Now you can disappear again. Thank you so much. Everybody say thanks, Hammer. Thanks, Hammer. Yay. Okay, people, I'm going to go get some sleep as well because I am very tired. I feel like I'm falling asleep right now, so I'm gonna get some quick dinner, then I'm gonna get some sleep. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching the stream. Tomorrow there's an early morning round, so actually let me go for 1 second. Tomorrow there's an early morning round. Can you hear me? Tomorrow there's an early morning round, so we start at 10 a.m. Portugal time, which is 11 a.m. CEST. Who knows if I'll be awake, but I have to. And there's also streamer tournament tomorrow, which I'm not sure I'm gonna stream. I think I might just record it because I don't like streaming it and then like not having the DGT board and stuff. Like I think it's gonna, yeah. So because I don't think it's that good content if you guys can't see the board. So I think I might just record it. But we will see what mood I'm in. But I will be recording everything at least. We will see. Also depends how tired I am. But anyways, thank you so much, everybody, once again for watching the stream. Thank you for rooting for me. I'll be back tomorrow morning with the next round. Super excited, and let's try to keep winning, and then we'll have my mom on stream tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching the stream. We're gonna raid somebody. Thank you so much, YouTube chat. Thank you so much, Twitch chat. And let me raid Dina. I'm gonna raid Dina. Let me raid Dina. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm raiding Dina. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching the stream. Take care. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye, YouTube. Bye-bye, Twitch. Take care. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Bye-bye.